Welcome to the Hop Takes, the podcast where we give you our hop takes on hot topics. Let's rock. I'm really excited to be here. I'm the Woods and May. We are looking good, feeling good, and doing good. First, to start off, look, do you want to step up your shower game? You got to, man. First, you can get $10 off on your orders off your $10 plus with Dr. Squatch. Look, you can take up your game 100%, whether it's Fresh Falls, Pine Tar, Cool Fresh House, some of the classics. You really want to step into this. Use the code. It's going to be linked in the bio so you can take advantage of that. Look, today we have a very special, the first podcast that we're doing, and I'm really excited because it's going to be here with the one and only, the legend themselves, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. I am the Woods and May, looking good, feeling good, and doing good. You want to introduce yourself, good sir?
Hi, I'm TrustTheCurrent.
TrustTheCurrent. Okay.
I don't have a fancy tagline.
Yeah. So, TrustTheCurrent. So, just to start off, obviously we have some topics to start, but how did you get your name? How did you come up with it? And just give us a little backstory of that.
Oh yeah, TrustTheCurrent is a line from my favorite band, the Wonder Years. They have a song, and in the song he says, "Trust in the current," and I just love that song. It's off of the album No Closer to Heaven.
Heck yeah, I love that.
I think.
And who's the artist?
The Wonder Years.
The Wonder Years. That's what you said, right? Which we saw them live. I forget. When did we see them live?
Oh God.
I don't even remember.
3 years ago now?
It has to be more than that, I feel like. Because that would be 2020. 2023.
Oh my God.
It has to be. It was before I got married.
2017.
2017, yeah. That sounds right.
You got married in 2018, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So it would have been 2017. I've seen them every year.
No, right. I figured too that'd be confusing because like it's your favorite band, so you find any opportunity. Which it was amazing concert and stuff. But
it was. I had a really good time.
I was amazing. I was the guy in the suit trying to be in the mosh pit.
You wore that down in the mosh pit too. I was so impressed with that. It was so hot in there.
I will say with that though, I ruined like my favorite shoes that night. I never will recover. Never got another pair of shoes like that.
I don't know why you thought that was a good idea.
Yeah, it really wasn't a good idea at all. It was bad. It deserves one of these.
It was your first time in the pit, wasn't it?
I think so. I can't because I went to. No, it was. That was my first official pit. Yeah, I'll say that. But to start off, let's just because hop takes. Why is it hop takes? One, we both we love beer.
Are you gonna explain your name?
What's up?
Have you ever explained to these fine people what your name is?
I have, but I can, honestly. So if you're just joining in, welcome again to the podcast, The Woods and May. So if you're wondering where the name comes from, The Woods and May comes from, when I was coming up with names, I needed something to kind of stand the test of time. And at the time I was seeing this girl, we weren't official and it was getting serious. I was like, what? I need to take this to the next level. And I decided to make this whole thing. I made a picnic basket, amazing sandwich, bottle of wine. I wrote a nice poem, and she got back from California, and I took her out on this hike with this picnic, and we found our spot, and I showed her, I wrote the poem, and now it's my wife, Rachel, if you've been around here. And that's why I go. So it was in the month of May in the woods. So the woods in May. I think it just has a really nice sound. So that's why I really liked it. And it's just kind of stuck. And I really like it. I think it has just a lot of diversity. You know what I mean? A lot of versatility. Because originally, I'm a musician too. So it can tap into a lot of areas, not just gaming, podcasts, a little bit of everything. So Love
I've
it.
heard you call her the wife too.
Yeah. I think that's honestly what the community kind of like dubbed her. You know, she just like it's like that's the wife in May. It's like she's not just the wife in May. Which I think we can talk into a little bit, just like, you know, roles and what we're gonna go into. But let's go into, you know, hop takes. We're gonna this is supposed to kind of resemble for anyone that likes beer and just likes talking, you know, having those moments with your friends and just like chatting it up, just having these moments where you can like be honest with each other. I think that's what we want to replicate. So to start off, let's talk about our beers. Like, what is your beer right now?
Right now I have a bourbon barrel drafty kilt from Monday Night Brewing.
Okay, tell me more.
Which is a local local brewery in Atlanta, and it's they do a Scotch. Apparently, they have done a Scotch style ale.
Okay,
and then they have aged it in bourbon barrels, so it tastes exactly
like a whiskey. Like a whiskey? Is that like? Is it a little bit syrupy?
No, not at all, which is really good.
Okay. What
literally, I don't think they use bourbon flavoring. They just put it in the barrels.
No, right. I've just noticed with those, sometimes it can be a little syrupy. That doesn't mean that it's bad, but it like provides like a interesting like complexity to the beer.
Yeah, no, this one's not too syrupy. It might be because it's a Scotch ale.
Fair.
Which I'm pretty sure is referring to Scotland.
Yeah.
Like Scotch candy.
True.
So that should be a little lighter than a stout. And I think when a lot of people put beers in bourbon barrels, they tend to do stouts, which are heavier anyway.
That's rare. I guess like is it a high ABV? Like does it have a high alcohol percentage being in like cuz I notice also with like those beers it can be in like a since it is in like a Scotch or like a like any kind of like that situation, it's like it can be higher. Not always, because I've that's not actually bad. Because like I've come across like some that are like, you know what I mean, like 12% or like 10%.
Oh man, I remember you and I one time went to a place and
was it Black Flag?
We both got flights. No, it wasn't Black Flag.
It wasn't.
We tried a new place because we knew what Black Flag's beers were like, but we went to this new place.
If you're wondering real quick, if you're listening, Black Flag was probably, for me at least, it was my favorite brewery in Maryland. It still is probably to this day. I'd have to go back. Yeah, so it was our favorite brewery, so that's why we're kind of mentioning it this way. But go ahead.
I just remember we went to this place one time and we both got flights and the beer was really good and smooth and flavorful. It didn't taste like a high alcohol content. And we got like 3 or 4 into the flights and just kind of looked at each other and then looked at the board and they were all like 12, 13, 14%. And we were like, oh.
That sounds about right.
Not going anywhere else tonight.
That sounds like an experience that we've done a few times. So that sounds about right. That sounds like a good beer, dude. You like it?
I like it a lot, actually.
Okay, and you said the only like heart because you texted me before and you said something about like because it's a collab beer, isn't it? Or no?
Nah, I didn't get that one.
Oh, you didn't get okay.
That was something different.
That's something different. Got it.
I'm not gonna support that.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. Well, that sounds really good.
What do you have?
I am drinking Thought Police. Thought Police, which is literally the brewery kind of like close to me. It's a solid brewery, New Anthem. They have a few locations now. They have 3 locations. And this one, the way it's described, it's citrusy, grapefruit. It's a hazy IPA. Citrusy grapefruit hop vehicle with hints of flowers, gooseberries, a touch of rye, crafted with Vicks, Centennial, Citra, Pale, malt, oats, rye, malt. So honestly, it's really good. I mean, you definitely like on the nose, you get like nice like floral tones to it. It smells like refreshing. And then when you drink it, you definitely get that that citrusy grapefruit kind of like what it describes as. And then it finishes off with like that gooseberry. The gooseberry I kind of like identify as like more of like a wine kind of touch. I know that sounds weird, but like if you think of like one of my favorite hops, I don't know if you have a favorite hop, but like my favorite hop is the Nelson Sauvin hop because it provides like a kind of like a Sauvignon Blanc kind of experience. I know that sounds weird, and I'm like, people might be listening and be like, why are you talking about wine when you're drinking beer? But like, honestly, like I think it's just adds a nice complexity, because if you're drinking a hazy IPA and it finishes with that tone, it's like really good. So this beer is good. It's solid.
Yeah, I can imagine what you're talking about. You're describing it really well for as someone who drinks wine and likes Sauvignon Blanc. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So I really like it. I mean, this one's good. It's not my favorite beer from them. But the can art is really cool. I mean, it's a dark can. It's like Thought Police. So you see people like walking. It's like, what does that make you think of? A lot of theirs have to do with like music. So is there like a song or an album or artist that has Thought Police like in it? I can't think of anything.
I don't think so. Are you saying thought like as in
thinking,
or thought as in
thinking, not like just to clarify. That's a good point. Yeah, I guess I should clarify. Yeah, that's honestly, is that their next variation of the beer? Maybe. I don't.
It could be.
Would they do that in North Carolina? Probably not.
Yeah. I don't know. North Carolina has become pretty liberal. They might try.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, we live in a pretty like I don't want to say like progressive, but it's as progressive as it gets in like North Carolina, like in Wilmington at least. Yeah,
so. I live in the most progressive part of Georgia.
That's fair.
I get it.
Yeah.
20 minutes out of the city and you're like, this is a different country.
Yeah, that's fair. So let's just jump into it. Let's jump into the podcast and why we're here. And I'm really excited to talk about this because I think it provides a lot of experience for people that are listening. The topic for today's podcast is going to be toxic masculinity. Like, what is toxic masculinity? Is it real? Is it something that people experience? Is it something that we experience daily? Is it not? And are we just talking BS? Look, we're here to tell you the facts, okay? It's facts. Two guys drinking beer. How much more facts can you get, okay? You got to trust the current.
So factual.
So factual, okay? So to start off, what does toxic masculinity mean to you? And or what is it? Yeah, like let's just ask that question, the basic question. What is toxic masculinity?
Yeah, that's a good question. Do you want me to answer it first, or you want to answer it first?
Please.
This is kind of your home.
No. Please go ahead.
Okay. I think toxic masculinity is the imposition of particular traits onto people who identify as men or identify as masculine. So I think a lot of the I think sometimes some of the traits that can be brought up in toxic masculinity, or some of the things attributed to toxic masculinity, like they're toxic because they're being imposed onto somebody and they're not that individual's choice. In particular, like the idea that a man is always strong. Like, it's fine if someone who identifies as a man or who is masculine identifies as being strong or stoic and like chooses to do that. It's another thing if someone is like, you have to be that in order to be a man. So I think that's where the line is. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. First off, let's give you a round of applause. That's honestly spot on. I think toxic masculinity has impact on all people, and I think the most important thing is like those traits and those personality things, those things that kind of drive, in my opinion, society for the most part. It has an influence on our everyday experiences. So like not just within being a guy or a male, I think also for other people, for like females as well, and like the job like market and how you should react. Like if you're around a whole bunch of guys and your whole, we have firsthand experience, I think, like, so a little backstory on our background. We did door-to-door sales. So like we were literally surrounded by guys for our work experience, and it was an experience. Honestly, that's like a good talking point too. Like, what does that mean? It's like you're supposed to essentially react a certain way because you're a man. Like, I'm a strong man. I'm a strong person, and I don't cry. Like, I am strong, and I'm supposed to support. It's those things that we think of, good or bad. And by the way, this doesn't mean that also being masculine doesn't mean, that's not to taint the word masculine, right? It's supposed to just point to what toxic masculinity is and why that isn't necessarily good, or is it good, right? That's why we're having this discussion. So yeah, what do you think?
You were saying that toxic masculinity isn't to taint masculinity, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think masculinity is inherently toxic.
Right. I just think the normality version of masculine, like for example, if I were to tell you, trust the current, if I was to tell you like, hey dude, you know what, being masculine, you need to cry. Is that normal?
No.
In society? Right. So I think, but that's the idea though, right? Like, being masculine doesn't have to portray, like not crying, but why does society necessarily do that? So that's an interesting like topic. And I guess like my question to you is, that's just an example of one, but like, what are some ways in your opinion that like toxic masculinity, I can't even say it, toxic masculinity kind of like showcases itself day to day for you, I guess?
I think the emotions is a good one. That's probably the biggest. I think a lot of men have experiences where they're told they can't express their emotions, or that expressing their emotions somehow makes them less attractive.
Mhm.
I think the second biggest one, or even arguably the biggest one, would be ambition.
Interesting.
Men are told constantly that we have to be ambitious and constantly like climbing up the ladder and striving for CEO-ship or bigger,
Interesting.
better, faster. What about you? How do you?
Well, I want to stick on that real quick. I want to stick on that real quick because like you're talking about ambition. I think this is important. Like, why is that a problem, right? Because like someone listening right now might be like, well, being ambitious is not bad. I'm a guy, right? Like I want to be the best. Like for example, I'm playing video games, right? I stream. I want to be the best streamer. I want to be the best gamer in this game. I want to be the best at this and that. Now, if I'm a listener, like why? Because someone might just take that the wrong way. So like what do you mean by just like being ambitious and having that? Should someone be like, oh, I shouldn't be ambitious then?
No, I don't think being ambitious is a toxic trait. But if we go back to the definition we established of toxic masculinity, it's the imposition of a trait onto people, right? And I think a lot of men have experiences where they're told in order to be men or be masculine, they have to be ambitious. Like you have ambitions because that's what you've chosen to pursue yourself. I think a lot of us have ambitions. But I think that the imposition of constantly trying to be the next Mark Cuban, you see that a lot on YouTube.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I think also it kind of like what you're kind of talking about. It's like kind of setting yourself up for failure, kind of like, or at least like if you fail, you like feel like you've lost as a man. Is like what I'm kind of hearing. It's like because you're supposed to be ambitious, because you're supposed to like try to achieve these goals, and if you're not achieving them, you're not a man.
Yeah, I think the phrase that you just used is really important. The fact that if you don't accomplish it, then you feel like you're failing as a man, or if you don't accomplish something, you feel like you're failing as a husband or a father or anything like that. Like, that's not true. Just because you're not the best number one podcast host doesn't mean that you're suddenly also not a good father or not a good husband or not a good man. Like, how many podcasts are there? There's like 1 million podcasts out there.
I completely agree in it. And honestly, I think that's honestly what kind of stops a lot of people, right? Is that fear. It's like a pseudo kind of like duo combatant thing, because like one side of you is like telling you, it's like, oh, you need to be the best. And then the other side is like, don't do it because you're not going to be the best. So it's like, if
do you feel that?
yeah, I definitely do. I mean, especially with starting new things. And I think this is why it's an interesting period for me. Like, just starting a podcast and being here with you, it's definitely a new territory for me. And I think it's honestly very healthy ever since, I stopped working at Dr. Squatch, and I've been trying to like experiment with my content and do more hockey content, just doing things that I love. There's always that mentality of like, you're not going to be the best, so you shouldn't do it. And like I see that all the time with like streamers, like, or like people that want to make content are always having that fear. But I'll just tell this to some, like, if anyone's listening and it's like, knows a little bit about my backstory, it's like, if I didn't do that back in 2019, and at that time there was no one making YouTube videos about Dr. Squatch. And you know me, man, you remember like I was like talking about Dr. Squatch like nonstop. And back in 2019, I decided to make some YouTube reviews of soap, and it like blew up at the time, and it got a lot of attention. And then a few years later, I was working for them, and that just kind of shows to like, you gotta fight that like thought process. And I completely understand though, like, but you have a point though. It's like just that idea of like ambition and like trying to be ambitious, but it's like, how do you find that like healthy like nature of ambition without like being too hard on yourself? Because I think we have a lot of things going on. We just went through 2020. Let's just talk about that. It feels like 2020, 23. You know what I mean? Like, it feels like it feels like we're still trying to combat, or like at least like try to understand what happened in 2020. So like, I guess, how do we as like men, or just people in general, like combat that?
I mean, to the ambition thing, I think it's just recognizing whether or not you're being ambitious because you want to do something well, or whether it's because you think that's somehow going to make you more of a man.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think just making sure that one particular thing isn't your identity. I was reading this article about a paper, and it was talking about resilience and the fact that women in general, according to the study, tend to be more resilient because they get their identities from their place in their community, their place in their family, their place in their job, and their abilities in like extracurricular activities. So if one of those things kind of falls to the wayside, or something happens in one of those areas of their lives, like, they have other things to do, and they have other places where they're expressing themselves and getting a sense of identity from. Whereas men typically only get their sense of identity from work and their position within their household. So as soon as like your marriage starts to be on the rocks, or maybe you're not getting the promotion at work, like, then men's whole idea of themselves starts to fall apart. Which is why a lot of times you'll see, like, it's kind of a trope on TV where like the guy's having trouble at work, and so he goes home and then picks a fight with his wife. But that's why, because he's having trouble at work and he's falling down on that hierarchy, so he goes to impose himself on the only other hierarchy he has.
Interesting.
Whereas if we were to diversify ourselves and say, okay, becoming the best podcast host is only like one thing I have that I want to do, I also have like 6 other things I want to do. Then if you're not the best podcast host, that's fine, because you're just going to go do your other things.
Yeah, that's honestly spot on. It makes me think, even, through my journey and like thinking about that, like I had a tough time after Dr. Squatch because it was like so much of my identity. So
Yeah.
now I wasn't like going back to your point and like doing, not even to your point, but to your example, and like picking a fight, but I did have to pick up the pieces and be like, okay, what do I have to do? Like, what should I do next? What is the next thing for the Woods in Maine? What is the next thing for me? And that was an experience, right? Like, I'm now deciding to get my master's, and like I'm now deciding to do these things to kind of help me. But that was a kind of reflection of like looking in the mirror. Now, the reason I bring this up is because one, I think one of the hardest things for guys and men to do, and that's why I'm being vulnerable right now, because one, men are not vulnerable. Let's just talk about that. We're not willing to express ourselves or like express being in a hurt situation, because guess what? We're supposed to be strong. We're supposed to be resilient, and we're not supposed to express those things. But I think it's super important to talk about these things because it shows a little bit more honesty and truth, and also helps with not only growing, but then also helps within your relationships. Like if you're a little bit more honest with what's going on, you can be able to talk to your friends, your best friends, to your wife, to your girlfriend, to your boyfriend, whatever it is. Like you're able to just have these conversations that are a little bit more honest and puts you in a space of vulnerability rather than, I don't know, controversy. I don't know what to say. I don't know what the word is.
Vulnerability rather than toxic masculinity.
Mm.
We could talk about that. Remember that I said that I heard that podcast where they tried to call it toxic invulnerability?
Yeah, let's go into that. Like, what do you mean by?
What do you think?
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask you instead. What do you think the difference is between like toxic masculinity and just other toxic behaviors that come out of that being invulnerable? Like, so you're talking about being more honest in your relationships
Mhm.
and having more authentic conversations, but the opposite of that would be toxic behavior, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
So is there a difference between toxic masculinity and toxic behaviors in general, or are they the same thing?
I think I would, in general. So, can you rephrase that question just so I make sure I understand it before I answer?
Is there a difference between toxic behavior and toxic masculinity?
Hmm. To a certain extent, yes, but also no. So I think, I know that's a scapegoat. Yeah, yeah. I think toxic masculinity really represents itself in everyday life more than we want to admit. So like it influences also like, I mean, I can't talk on this. Like obviously we can have like a female co-host maybe, or like just like different perspectives, but like I know like that, like for example, it would leak into just talking to my wife and talking to like her experience. It can leak into like if you have a whole bunch of females in a room, that like experience of like, for example, like you put it in this way, right? Like where, yeah, but like in your example, or your example was talking about a man that isn't like getting that promotion and coming home and like doing, arguing with his wife. But it's the same thing. It's like it trickles down, right? Like, so if you put like women in a room and one has power, one doesn't, or like, like power, that whole idea of power, that's a conversation itself. But like, it kind of displays itself. So I guess that's the question, is like, to your point, it's like, is toxic traits inherently touched by the idea of like masculine traits? And I think in the society, the patriarchal society that we live in, I think so. I think it does. So I would say yes. To now formally answer the question, I think it does. I think they're the same just because of the society that we live in. Do you disagree, or like what's your thoughts?
I mean, I think that toxic masculinity tends to refer to a broad set of traits, and then toxic behavior is like actions. And I think that
That's fair.
toxic behaviors can sometimes be someone's attempts to represent masculinity that they've only learned from toxic masculinity. But I don't want to say that toxic behavior and toxic masculinity are the same thing, because women are just as capable of toxic behavior.
Yeah, and I agree. And that's like,
They're also not masculine.
they can be. That's my whole point, though. It's like, that's my whole point, is like how much it influences, like how much toxic masculinity can influence the female experience, or at least like being toxic. And I'm not saying that is like, I don't know, and I could be completely wrong here, but
I think there's a difference between, okay, I think and you can tell me if I'm wrong, because I'm kind of interpreting what you're saying. I think that there's toxic masculinity, which would be the imposition of traits and characteristics onto masculine identifying people
I see.
in order to achieve masculinity.
Yeah.
What you're talking about is patriarchy, which we all swim in. And so the statement might be that toxic behavior is
You're drinking the water.
an expression of patriarchy, right? So whether
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
a
yeah.
man or a woman or any other identification, that toxic behavior is a product of patriarchy. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're on point. You're on point.
Okay.
It's an interesting thought. So like, but to your point though, it's like, or I guess like, what is the difference in your eyes? Or like, when you brought up the question, what was, like, why was it important to or maybe not separate, but like, what was the purpose? Like, what's your thoughts?
Oh, well, I think for one, that toxic behavior is genderless.
Yeah.
And anyone can have those behaviors. I think that toxic masculinity is just a different thing.
Okay.
Not necessarily a mutually exclusive thing, right? Like, you can have toxic behaviors that are coming from a place of toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that they're the same thing. And I think that I kind of think of toxic masculinity as like something being like done to someone, and then toxic behaviors are the way they're acting.
I see. Well, honestly, this is a perfect segment that I want to allow the viewers, like, if you're watching this, look, we have future plans for the podcast, and if you enjoy this kind of content, be sure to like and subscribe. If you're on YouTube, if you're listening anywhere else, we're going to put some information down below where you can join into the conversation, and maybe potentially in the future, you can even jump into the conversation. Yes, you can jump into the conversation. We want to hear your thoughts. Is there a difference between the two? You let us know. This is the moment for you. Now, I have a really fun transition. Yeah, be vulnerable. Like, we want you to. We want you to do that. So this is the moment for you. Look, this is the transition for us. I want to transition to something kind of fun. You know, something that happened recently that was like, I don't know, I would put it down as like a really historical moment, even though it, like, I don't know, some people might not agree, but let's just talk about the Barbie movie and what that did to society for a quick minute. Honestly, it held some crazy records, and I have a fun fact for you all. If y'all didn't know, the Barbie movie cost about $145 million. Correct me if I'm wrong. You can correct me in the comments, wherever. It doesn't matter. But it cost $145 to $150 million to make, and then they spent $155, I don't know, $million in marketing, and it worked. It worked, and honestly, it's a great movie. If you haven't watched it, you need to watch it. You're already behind, but let's talk about the Barbie movie. Now, Trust the Current. I want to hear your perspective. I know you didn't like the movie, but I want I know you didn't like the movie, so let me just hear your thoughts. Give it to me.
I think that movie was historic. I think that that movie exceeded my expectations. I had pretty high expectations because I'm a fan of Greta Gerwig. I'm a fan of Noah Baumbach. I'm a fan of Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling and Hannah McKay and Nakuda Gatwa. So my expectations were already like soaring through the roof, and I just came out of that movie blown away.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, I think that I am like preaching about Barbie. And I've definitely been listening to the soundtrack pretty much every day.
Heck yeah.
Since that movie came out. What did you think about it?
So I loved it. I loved it for the experience of being able to go to the movie, and I think it's kind of sad to say, but I think a lot of females or just feminine people were able to have something to go and enjoy. Let's just say this: 99% of the movies, maybe not 99, but dude. You know how many men love chick flicks or like, rom-coms? Like, it's not just a female thing. Let's just talk about that. But this movie was like literally made in a woman empowering, just like a really good space for that. And like I said, 99% of movies are not. So this is just like to your point, it was a historic moment in a sense of that, guys can go watch a movie and have this kind of experience really anytime, even if they don't enjoy a movie, but they can like go and experience this. And that's just at the like the tip, right? Like as we break down the iceberg of what Barbie is, I think we can get into more deep conversations as to what it did and like what it does. But let's go into that. Like, why was it such a historical experience for you? And what are some things we should like kind of look at as we talk about toxic masculinity?
I think I saw it as a historic movie because I don't know that there's been a movie that's come out in a time period and been able to hold the conversation the way the Barbie movie did. I know there's a lot of like critiques about it being a capitalist pull and a white feminist piece again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I really feel like what Barbie did accomplish was being able to have the conversation of feminism, and then at the same time you had the A and B plot, right? You had Barbie going out into the real world and trying to figure out what's going on with the Barbies, and then you had Ken who gets into the real world and is like, oh, I kind of like this patriarchy thing. But the way they ended up doing it was that the A plot with Barbie and the B plot with Ken almost are having a conversation with each other about what is masculinity and what is feminism and what is, what's the ethical way to handle these topics and issues and what needs to come out of it. And ultimately came out with like a resolution, which how many movies do we have that talk about a serious topic that actually have a resolution at the end? Like something that you can take home and apply to your life.
That's true.
And say like, oh, they kind of like handed me an answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think it was historic from a filmmaking perspective for that accomplishment. But I think it was also historic for the way it made a lot of women feel. I've heard they felt safe seeing the movie. I heard that they felt uplifted and spoken to in a way they haven't before.
Mm-hmm. That's very true.
How did you feel seeing it?
Yeah, no, I agree with every pretty much all those talking points. I think it's important to realize that. And if you, like I said, I'll just reiterate this before I go into any critiques of it. I think watch it, dude. Just like, dude, if you're a guy watching this or listening to this podcast and you haven't watched it, just go watch it with like open ears and just like open up a beer, dude. You know what? Have your own hop take. Have your own hop take and just
gin and tonic.
Yeah, just like gin and tonic, some whiskey, whatever is your. I'm only talking about beer because I love beer. That's my go-to. So like whatever is your thing, just like just watch the movie, dude. You're gonna have a good time. Trust me. I went there and I had a good time. My critique is definitely to your talking points of like, just talking about just white feminism or just like being just that aspect of like, what does it mean for a woman? I think they did a good job in representation, but my critique is not actually representing. You know what I mean? Like, it's not actually talking about those points. And it's funny because like the movie itself kind of like joked about it, which I really respected because they were like, here comes the white savior. But the thing is like they like introduced this joke, but then it happened. You know what I mean? But at the same time, it's a Barbie movie, right? So you can't be like super critical because it's like a Barbie movie. But that's like where my critiques kind of come from.
Right. I hear this critique and I think it's generally fair, but at the same time, from like a writing perspective, I can see how difficult it would be.
It's super
to make
difficult.
a Barbie movie.
It's Barbie. That's my whole point.
Like, it's almost a whole other movie if you're going to have Barbie approach representation versus approaching this issue with Ken.
Yeah.
It would have been an entirely different movie, and you can't do both conversations at the same time.
But I say you can. I say you can.
I don't think
I say you
can in a 2.5-hour movie.
I will say you can't in the capitalistic world that we live in with toxic masculinity.
I just meant that it wouldn't make a good movie.
I think it could. Like, well, I think
it could. I think
the only reason it
topics are too big to have a solid.
What are you saying?
From just a writing perspective, I don't see how you could do both well and give them both issues their due.
I see that's where I disagree because I really think it's just a stable of life in general of what we're going through. And to say like for a Hollywood movie that spent 150 million and made millions off of it, I really think that they could. Like, I think that's part of the problem, right? Like when we're talking about it, and I know like we're kind of branching off, but like I think that's where we can really dive deep into, you know, for example, you know how many times probably screenwriters is like, we can't write about that. We can't write about female problems. That just is too much right now. And I think the problem just with that statement alone is like, we can. It's just that we don't want to.
Well, I'm not saying that you can't write about it. I'm just saying that to write the story they had about Barbie and Ken, and then to also write a story where Barbie is confronting representation is kind of a lot in a 2.5-hour period. I'm not saying that you can't write about that. I'm just saying that you could have had a Barbie movie that addressed representation, or you could have had this Barbie movie that addressed the relationship with Ken. But to fit both into a 2.5-hour period would have felt really cramped.
Okay, so I guess like my question,
literally from a filmmaking perspective, not even like a
right,
and talk about or what we can talk about, just literally from a sitting down writing a script, it would have just been really hard.
No, that's fair. And I was just gonna say, like, do you think part of the problem also is like the whole Barbie dichotomy that we kind of live in? Not even dichotomy, but just like in general, the Barbie world. Like in the idea that, you know, if we think of Barbie, if anyone like is thinking about Barbie right now, It's like we're literally thinking about, I don't know, what's the stereotypical Barbie, right? Like, what is the stereotypical Barbie? I ask you.
You tell me.
No, I ask you. I ask you.
No, I ask.
No, I ask you. I ask you.
I am rubber, you're glue. Okay, we all know that Barbie was originally the Margot Robbie type. Clearly.
Yeah.
But don't you think that in a way
I'm waiting for you to say the next.
let me turn this into a question. If they were going to address representation in Barbie, how would you have wanted to see that?
I mean, at the very basic core, I think it would have brought an upward. Like, I think of did you watch the live action of Little Mermaid? This is
No.
Yeah, I guarantee 99% of people watching this or listening to this are gonna say no. But you remember, I assume anyone listening, do you remember when it was literally blown out of, well, all right, do you remember the reaction? I already kind of answered the question, but do you remember the reaction when the live action?
Yes.
And what was the reaction of having a certain person play that role of Little Mermaid?
Some of it was funny, but it was pretty racist.
Why was it funny? But I agree though, like it was funny to kind of like see people react that way, but like what's your take on that?
What's my take on it?
Yeah.
Oh, my take of it on the one hand is just one it was just racist. But then you had another group of people who, I don't think they were doing it because they hated black people. I think
I know, I agree.
They really believe that like Ariel was a redhead, so Ariel should be a redhead.
Yeah.
And you're just like, okay, but that's kind of like flimsy and silly. And then the one that was really funny to me,
it's a cartoon character.
I know, right? But the one that made me laugh was when people were like, what do you think would have happened if a black person just randomly showed up on a beach in that time period? Like, it's the rest of the movie wouldn't happen. It's just not how that worked.
Yeah.
You know, like taking like this really like hard historical approach when you're talking about a movie about mermaids. So we're obviously like not working with reality to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It was just, all of it was silly.
Yeah, so my whole point is like it's just, first off, it's a doll, right? So like you can kind of approach it. I think there's a freedom, a certain aspect. I think what they did was, I think it was, in my opinion, I think it was the easy approach to be able to market it, which they did heavily. And I don't think they wanted any form of controversy in the sense of like who they're casting for it. But with that, they were able to introduce.
Disagree on that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. But they introduced a lot of like different cast people, but how they also introduced those different, like even Ken dolls, I think it could have done a bit more for, I guess, that. In my personal opinion, just being a Latino, like watching it as a male, Hispanic male, like it could have done more. Like it felt a little bit dismissive, and that's why I didn't have that same experience.
Okay, I can kind of see what you're saying. But I had a little different perspective, which was I felt that Barbie and Ken have always been the blonde-haired, blue-eyed white people. Is historically like how the dolls were made. And I almost felt like part of Barbie's story in the movie was confronting her white privilege and having to come up with an answer of like, I have this platform, I have this privilege that I didn't ask for, that I've kind of been thrust into. And like, I mean, the song is literally what was I made for? Like, she's literally asking the question, like, why am I here? What could I do with this?
Yeah.
You know, what's her place and her role in that? So while I understand the argument for more representation in the movie, I still think that that's actually also an important like tension and conversation to have, because you can't just replace the blonde hair, blue eyed Barbie. I mean, she's been around for 50 years, but we can have her question like what her role is. Yeah, so I kind of wondered if maybe they chose to have Barbie approach her white privilege and what her place in the world is from that position, rather than overtly reshaping the character or recasting the character as a person of color or of a different tradition than the blonde hair, blue eyed Barbie. But you had brought up a point that as a Latino, you were a little disappointed in the representation of Barbie. So can you just talk about that a little bit more? Because I mean, the people listening can't see this, but I'm just a white haired, blue eyed man myself. So I don't get to have that same experience as you are. What was it like for you?
Yeah, and let me just start this by saying, like, one, me as a male, this, you know, we're talking probably to majority men. And if you're a female watching this, like, give us your thoughts. Like, first, I want to bring up, woman. I want to give up, like, just give the spotlight to women in general. Like, this was your movie, and this is just a discussion that we're having. Secondly, to my experience, like,
letting us in.
Yeah, exactly. And to my experience, like, I think just being Latino and being like a man, I think it felt like it's the best approach to a movie with passive, like, in quotations, not being racist. Not saying that Barbie was racist, but that just, like, you know, like other movies, it's like blatantly, like, you can tell that they purposefully, like, got this person to do the role, so they, like, it's not just like white people, like, you know, like, or like it's like, you know, like in any movie or anything, you, like, know they're trying to, like, diverse, like, show that they're diverse just by, like, casting certain people. And
you mean the token black guy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just in general.
Say that.
Just in general, like, and I feel like
right, but the token gay, the token Latino, the token Latina, the token
yeah, and I think it was done to kind of combat the idea of, like, hey, this is a Barbie movie, but, like, we have all these Barbies. And, like, even if you want to look into the history of, like, Barbie, I'm sure you can see that is also, like, what is the history? I don't actually even know what the history of Barbie is, but, like, to start off that way as, like, a prototypical what a female is supposed to be, like, that already is, like, driving my mind as, like, problems. Like, that's already a red flag. And if you're starting at a red flag, it doesn't allow there to be room for growth. So the whole idea of, like, the movie should be started with the red flag is, like, already, like, no, I don't agree with that. Like, I think you can shake things up and be okay with what happens next, because we're living in a world that is, like, continuously changing. There's so much things, good and bad, first off, whatever way you perceive it. You know, I don't know how you perceive it, but, like, I think there is definitely, you know, points to be made of, like, the representation of what a female is supposed to be in a doll representation for, like, all girls, not even, like, one single family or anything, but it was supposed to be a representation of a female and, like, what a female is.
A woman.
Yeah, a woman. So, like, what a woman is supposed to be. And I don't know why I keep saying female, just that's just my initial, but what a woman is supposed to be. And it's like, to me, that's already kind of a red flag for me. So, like, I'm okay with changing that.
But what do you think about the part where, or what did you think about the part where Barbie meets the original founder of Barbie, who was not a blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman, but did design the doll to be blonde-haired, blue-eyed?
Well, wasn't she? Was she? Like, what did she identify as? Like, what was that woman, like the creator? I don't know. She's not Jewish, is she? Like, is she?
The impression I was given was that she was Jewish, but I don't
That's
want to impose.
that's what
I don't
that's
wanna impose
my
on her.
yeah. That was my take too. And I could be wrong, but
We could be very wrong.
we could be very wrong. But even
But she was the point was she's not blonde hair, blue eyed. She created a doll that wasn't a representation of even herself.
yeah, but then in my mind, it's like that's what the representation that everyone agrees with, which is like, you know, what I mean, like that doesn't mean back in the day, yeah, like if you introduce when do you know like by fact, like, or not even by fact, like do you have an idea of like when Barbie was made? I actually don't. Like I actually don't know this, so like I'm asking. Like, do you know when Barbie was like originated?
Yeah. No.
But I assume it was like early, like my assumption is like 50s maybe.
Yeah, Barbie came out in about the 50s. She is I think that the history I really understand is from the movie and then like a cursory glance on like Wikipedia after having seen the movie. My understanding is that the woman in the movie had made Barbie, come up with the idea, and she was blonde haired, blue eyed because that's been the God. I hate saying the word traditional, but I don't have another word for it.
The only other word I can think about is Aryan. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but that's not.
Yeah, you say that, but the people who originally wrote down on paper the idea that the blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman was the most beautiful were the Greeks, who were not blonde-haired or blue-eyed.
Right.
It's not like so like it is that is an Aryan thing. Partly because the Aryans, as the Nazis, like imposed that as a thing, but the fact is
Right.
that like that idea of that being the beauty standard didn't come from an Aryan people.
Right.
Which is weird. It's really
It is weird.
You can go look it up. Like I've literally multiple podcasts, multiple books have said like the Greeks were the first ones to write that down and they just weren't blonde hair, blue eyed.
Now is that the standard we live in now? No. I don't think so.
I think my argument was that the movie was trying to confront that idea that while you have that beauty standard, like you also do have people that fit that description of a human being who know have to confront the fact that society has put them on a particular pedestal. And so that's what I thought the movie was trying to do, but I wanted to hear more about how you felt from the other end of it with representation. Especially the idea of machismo that you kind of touched on at the very beginning.
Yeah. I think to your point, like just as like one, I can only talk about my experience and being like so a little backstory. So anyone listening, my parents are from Honduras and I came here, grew up with a single mother pretty much for most of my life, and I've had to just really navigate certain intricacies of my life and like what that means for me as a person. And one of the biggest things that like talking points to your what you brought up was machismo. So machismo is for anyone that's like just in generally like curious what that means, is it's a form of toxic masculinity, but in the, to put it simplicity in layman terms, is toxic masculine. But it's a little bit different, just like doing what you need as a man, and like I'm like there's just a dynamic, right? Like you have the male, you have the woman, and the male is the one that essentially goes out and hunts and brings in like everything that the female needs, and then the female is like the one that cooks. So like that's machismo. It's like I'm the man and I'm supposed to live up to this standard. Like you're supposed to be doing everything. Like so that's why you have like guys that, or maybe Latino, they're just like I need to go out and do everything. And I had to like really take a step back and like understand who I am as a person and what that means to like really develop you know, the really good sides of being Latino and understanding my heritage. And I'm still doing that to this day, and I'm trying to learn and I'm trying to do what I can, but it's not easy and it's not like a simple thing. And I think just like bringing up those aspects, I think, and I think one of the biggest things too, it's like, you know, like, for example, I brought up the thing of like going out and hunting. Like, you obviously, like, men aren't going to go hunt, but like bringing the bread home. So like, what does that mean? Bringing the money. And guess what? If you're the money maker in this situation, like, you are the decision maker. Not only that, it's like anyone can disagree with you, and you're not going to disagree with me. And I think that's like the biggest thing, the biggest like harm. And I think it just has a clear representation or a clear correlation of what like toxic masculinity is, because like there should have been a dynamic of like, hey, I make this, so you need to listen to me, kind of thing. And I mean that in every day. So to tie back to Barbie, I think I branched off a bit, but
a specific question.
Yeah. Can you just like ask the question just to make sure I'm like on topic, I guess? Just make sure I'm good there.
No, you were, because I had asked you, I had referenced back to you bring it the machismo at the beginning and wanted you to be able to talk about that more.
Yeah, no,
did you feel like the movie represented machismo or spoke to it at all? Like, you're talking about the representation, and you talked about the fact that they still had Barbie be, for lack of a better term, the Aryan ideal, which I kind of hate because like Margot Robbie is a real person, but to have chosen her as the actress and the representation for Barbie rather than somebody else, I guess I just wanted to make sure like you were getting to like speak to the point of representation and what that's.
Yeah. I think I'm actually gonna turn this a little bit around, but I'm gonna touch on that point. Like, I think you hit on a really big thing. It's like when we think about like actors and actresses, like we don't see them as like people, or like we I don't know. Like, it's weird to say that, but like I'm a huge hockey fan, as you know. Well, TrustTheCurrent, you know, I'm a huge hockey fan, and it's like recently I just found out like one of my favorite players, or like one I grew up watching, might retire. Well, it's not actually official, so I'm not going to say that. But like Nicholas Backstrom, he might retire, and it's like, oh, he's a real person. Like, he's a real person. Like, he's like he's going. He's like aging. What the heck? No way. Like, it's like a weird thing going on in life. And I just like really want to touch on that aspect. And
yeah, I think it's a good thing to touch on, because I don't know, I feel like a little like, on the one hand I'm defending the Barbie movie, but on the other hand, like, I do know people who fit that typical description, and so maybe I'm defending that a little bit. Like, hey man, like, they're real people too, who also have something to have a position to empathize with. That's a little different.
But yeah, that's a good point though. That's like
yeah, so like
the realness.
Yeah, and that's what, when I watched the movie, that's kind of how I felt. Or that's
fair.
I guess what I felt Barbie was doing was, you know, she's the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and then she's like, oh, well, that's being imposed on other people, but I didn't choose to have that. Like, I was born with that, and so what can I do with that? But then I wanted to know more of, like, for you watching it, who doesn't fit that description, or doesn't fit the description of Ryan Gosling either. Like, what is it like when you do see them switch the casting?
Yeah, I think that's the very.
If you see, yeah, like what's I don't know what that experience is like, so I don't really know how to ask the question.
Yeah, I can tell when it's obvious. So like the same thing with like you know, let's get political real quick. Like the same thing that happens in
It's been political.
no, but like let's get more political. Let's talk about like even
Do it.
candidates. Like it's obvious, like so like for example, you have someone like Joe Biden. Joe Biden's running for president and his vice president is Kamala Harris. Oh my goodness, that was like a ploy for diversity. Let's check it off the list. It was
But Kamala Harris is a real woman who has achieved things, and like,
she has achieved things and also done
Are you saying
pretty.
she didn't reach her position through?
She's also no, she's done good things, but she's also done pretty like she's not. If I had to choose someone that was like a representation of diversity, it wouldn't be that just for diversity. You can tell when like candidates or like a political party is trying to do something to just be like, hey, we have the first like diverse person. Like we like it's just clear to me, and it goes for both parties. By the way, I'm not declaring a party. I'm not.
Emphasis
Yeah, go ahead.
is it the emphasis on the fact that she's a mixed race woman over her policy choices? Is that like kind of how that
Yeah,
becomes an obvious thing for you?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It does, and because it only ties to like, and we don't have to get into this right now. This could be another podcast first off, but I think
It could be a whole other.
it could be a whole different. So if you want to listen to this, be sure to again to like and subscribe and comment. But yeah, like I think in general, like I think it's just clear when politicians or like movies or just entertainment is trying to appease like diversity without actually approaching it. Now, again, let me just like also clarify. I don't think that's what Barbie's doing. I think Barbie did a good job. I don't think it did good enough. That's where I'm at.
But if so, I have a question. So if Barbie had, okay, first off, just to clear the air, are you aware that Margot Robbie's the one that bought the rights to the Barbie movie?
Is that before or after she got? Wait. Okay, no.
Presumably before.
Yeah.
But I don't know what the process is there of her having been cast
Yeah, that's
as.
okay. So I didn't fully know that, but go ahead.
Yeah, her apparently, this is what I've read. This is my understanding. I could be wrong. Her production company that she owns and runs bought the rights to make the Barbie movie from Mattel, and then she's the one that asked Greta Gerwig to write it, and pretty much told her she could write whatever she wanted. I don't know what how the casting decision worked.
So
the question is,
before you ask the question, let me just cut you off real quick. Trust the current. Just for anyone that's listening, who is Margot Robbie? Is that her name? Did I say her name right?
are you asking me who Margot Robbie is?
Did I say her name right? I'm asking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so who? Yeah, I'm asking who is that? If people don't know, like, or like, one, they might not even know. They might have not even watched the movie, and they might not even know who this actress is or this person, this director is.
So, do you want me just to say that Margot Robbie played Barbie, and Greta Gerwig wrote the script for Barbie and directed the movie?
Sure. I just was like trying to make people understand like who this person is because we're talking about her.
Okay, Margot Robbie is an actress and a filmmaker who is popular for her, probably most popular for her portrayal of oh my god, Harley Quinn in the Suicide
True.
Squad.
See, I didn't even know that was the same person. I'm not even joking. I'm not even joking. Yeah, I see. I don't know. I don't know actors and actresses like this. So this is important. Like
Oh my
this is
god. Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
This is important. This is why I'm asking this. This is why I'm.
Robbie. Margot Robbie is an Australian actress. She did a soapy kind of teen show in Australia, and then she was like, "Hey, I'm gonna go make it big in Hollywood," and they were like, "No, you're not." And she's like, "Here, hold my Cosmo." She comes to LA. She does like a couple of bit parts, and then she gets cast in Wolf of Wall Street with Leonardo.
Oh, dude, she was in that. What the heck? See. I didn't even know that.
Right. So people are
Oh, I
like,
forgot.
"Wow, that's an attractive woman. I wonder if she can act." And so she went and did. She was Harley Quinn in Suicide Squad, and she was. She's been in Amsterdam recently, and Babylon, which is another phenomenal movie that just Babylon blew my mind. Really good movie.
Okay. Okay.
I'm trying to think of like other things she's been in. She was in one of Quentin Tarantino's movies.
Wait. Have you ever watched?
She played Sharon Tate.
Have you watched Barbie? She was in that movie too.
Yeah,
She was.
in Barbie. So okay, so that's who Margot Robbie is. Now, there's a trend in Hollywood right now where, as an actor, you get paid a certain amount for being an actor, and you get certain rights, privileges, say so, in the creation of a character and the representation of a character on a set. And famously, if you're just an actor portraying a character, you've only got so much wiggle room, and they can tell you how to portray a character. And if you notice when you watch some of like your favorite shows like Community or Friends or anything else that's been on for more than like 3 seasons typically, you'll notice that the main cast starts to show up as producers on the show.
True.
And that's because it gets a different pay scale, and it comes with a different responsibility for the creation of the character, right? So rest in peace Matthew Perry, but Matthew Perry became a producer on Friends for his portrayal of Chandler Bing, and basically what that's doing is he's getting into the writer's room, he's getting in with the producers and the actors, and he's getting to dictate how Chandler Bing is portrayed. So if somebody writes something and he doesn't agree, he just says Chandler wouldn't say that, now his say has more weight.
That makes sense.
In a contractual perspective. So what Margot Robbie did was she came over here and said, "Oh, I only get paid a certain amount, and I've only got a certain responsibility for the creation of my characters. But if I make a production company and I sell Margot Robbie as an actress through the production company, so that the people who are making a film aren't contracting Margot Robbie directly, they're contracting Margot Robbie's production company, who is then contracting Margot Robbie. 1, she gets a better pay cut, and 2, she gets more control over the representation of her character. So, just as an example, Margot Robbie owns her portrayal as Harley Quinn.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you can't make anything that is trying to be Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn without Margot Robbie's permission.
Man, the legal terms, the legality. I should just become a lawyer, dude. You'd make so much money.
It's a fairly good profession.
It is.
So she was one of the first people that did that. She's also done another thing where she owns like this writing group that helps women write movies in genres that women are underrepresented in. So I want to say she's like 5 or 6 in action movies. So like there's been 6 action movies written under this group, and 5 of them have been made into films. And they're not written by her, they're written by other women who are part of this group, but they're like a writing group, and they talk and they workshop and they work together, and then they promote each other.
That's very cool. Let me
successful. It's fascinating.
Let me just say this. Like, I think what I'm experienced then is maybe a tip of the iceberg, but I'm so all right, let's put it in perspective. Like, if we have an iceberg, right? and I'm experiencing maybe the tip, or maybe like right below the tip, or maybe like 3 levels down, right? And then you as a person, you might be experiencing maybe like 5 layers into that iceberg. And then it's like, it's not even at the water, it's not even under the water. It's like maybe she is creating a space to, like, the original conversation is starting with Barbie and it's going to like progress like into something more. So I'll give it the benefit of the doubt to like progress to that.
So I can just take us back to that point. So my question was going to be that my point was Margot Robbie's production company bought from Mattel the rights to make a Barbie movie. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. She chose to have Greta Gerwig write and direct that movie. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you have felt if, instead of herself getting cast, instead of Margot Robbie getting cast as Barbie, in whatever way that was done, if Margot Robbie bought the rights and then just turned around and had cast America Ferrera as Barbie, instead of casting America Ferrera as the mother that she was cast as in the movie?
Oh yeah, yeah.
What if
I didn't even know the actress.
The two of them were purposefully switched. America Ferrera.
Yeah.
And I don't know. She's in a bunch of stuff. She's very, very good.
Well, you know people more, so just like again, like that's like I'm a complete, like I'm ignorant to names in general, but I'm also especially ignorant to like names and like films and stuff. So I guarantee I'm not the only one listening to this. So I just need to make it clear for people.
I'll just contextualize it within Barbie. Was you remember the mom?
I know who you're talking. Yeah, I know. I personally know who you're talking about. Yeah, she's a person in the movie.
Okay, how would you have felt as a Latino man who is worried about representation in movies if Margot Robbie and America Ferrera had been reversed?
Yeah, I would have felt better. Let's just start there. That like that's the basic thing. I think
it felt like that was forced.
No, if it's done in a really good way, I think the only idea that it's forced is the idea of Barbie. But Margot Robbie is not Barbie. Let's just make that clear. She is Barbie now, but I'm saying, first off, let's just talk about like the selfish aspect to like want to do that, and like that's, I think that there's more potential. And I mean, to be clear, I mean, that's why I want to get into marketing. That's why I want to get my MBA in marketing, because I do think there's more potential in like how you approach those kind of things. And like this for me is not it. Like I think it has,
call it selfish because we don't know what Margot's intentions were.
Exactly. Yeah. Sorry.
Barbie, and the fact that she isn't blonde hair, blue eyed, like she is a good representation of the original Barbie doll.
Yeah,
and it's not her fault. She was born a particular way, and
I'm not saying that
her created a doll that happens to look like her. So.
I'm not saying that, but she did spend the money to do it. Let's just say, like,
her intention was.
It's kind of clear. I can look at creating the movie and then spending the marketing to do it. Like, I think it's kind of clear.
Bought it and cast Emma Stone instead.
Yeah.
There is another actress that has blue eyes and is sometimes blonde.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, exactly. To your point, like, why not do someone else? It's like she paid for the money. She wants to do it her way. And again, this isn't to like throw like any kind of thing at her, but I just think, to your question, yes, like I think one, I would actually be interested, because I actually don't know. I would be interested in knowing. I would just be interested in knowing if there was actually like people that were trying out for this position, you know, like, because like I like, to me, I think it's not just about the identity being there, But at this point in stage in our lives, like it's clear to me that it is. The fact that there is an uproar with Little Mermaid. By the way, it's not a top film for me, but like I'm saying, like there is clear identity. Like, have you watched Encanto? Yeah, have you watched Encanto or like any of those kind of movies, like recent movies that are like more representation? Like, sorry, I'm like on Disney and stuff, but like I love those movies. Like, have you watched any of those movies? And if you haven't, I'm going to tell you to watch it.
I haven't gotten to because I don't subscribe to Disney Plus.
All right, if anyone wants to pay for
I mean, I can steal them if you want me to.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. No, Encanto is amazing. Honestly, really good music too. Like if you just love music, Encanto is an amazing.
I've heard phenomenal things about it. I just haven't. It hasn't been available to me.
Yeah, that's fair. Maybe we can do a movie night on Discord. Shh! Don't tell anyone. Don't tell anyone. But yeah, I just think it's becoming clearer that you kind of have to, and it's clear when it's forced though. Like, yeah, I agree to your statements. Like, if it was forced Barbie and it's like anyone that can fit in the role, just put her in, or it's like this person is just trying to be Barbie, and it's just like we just want to fill in the diversity card. You can't do that, right? Like, you can't do that with Barbie. My whole point is that you find that person that can. And if you're not going to do that right now in this day and age, yeah, what does that mean? What does that mean?
No. I'm asking this. No, don't do it that way. Because I'm very seriously right now. You're saying on the one hand, don't force diversity and inclusion, right? Mm-hmm. And then on the other hand, you're saying what? Like, what's the alternative? Like, to find, like, if you're intentionally, because I don't think that when a casting director is choosing an individual to represent a role, I don't think that when they choose a diverse person, they go, oh, hey, there's a Latina, let's just cast her.
They do.
What they're doing is saying, let's find. I don't think so. I think what they're doing is saying,
I want to paint a picture real quick.
Role that isn't white, but
I want to paint a picture.
What's the difference? What's the difference between forcing it and finding a person who's right for the role? Because clearly Margot Robbie was right for the role.
Forcing it is finding a person that is Indian to play a cab driver, which is this happened. I've listened to, including like Aziz Ansari, the comedian. Like I've listened to a whole bunch of people that are of like just have these experiences of being comedians or like being actors or actresses. So like to me, that's kind of clear. Like situations like that where you have people that are like doing that. Would you disagree?
I don't disagree.
All right. So this podcast has been amazing. We just want to thank you. If you've been listening this far, you are a true legend for just sticking around this, especially on a hot topic. Look, we went everywhere from toxic masculinity to machismo to the Barbie movie, and you've stuck around. And again, we just want to reiterate, if you haven't watched the Barbie movie, please, like, just do yourself a favor. Get yourself a drink and watch the Barbie movie. Like, that's something we agree on, right? Trust the current. Like, that is literally what you should do at the bare minimal.
Yeah.
And look, before we close off, I just want to give the space for Trust the Current. Look, Trust the Current, where is one space or any space that we can find you and maybe connect with you if we really resonated with what you were talking about?
You can find me at TrustTheCurrent on Discord. I'm part of the Woods and Maze Discord channel.
Right on. And literally the link is going to be down below where you can join up. And maybe you potentially can be a person that is live on chat. Look, these conversations maybe sometimes can be a little bit heated, but the most important thing is, look, Trust the Current, you know I love you. And I love having these conversations. This is a amazing opportunity that we can connect and just, one, have these conversations. But I think a lot of people feel like, especially guys, you know, talking about toxic masculinity, I feel like a lot of guys don't feel like they can have these conversations, and we're willing to do it. So let's take this to the next level. We are looking good, feeling good, and doing good. Be sure to like and subscribe if you're on YouTube. And be sure, if you're anywhere else just listening to this, if you want to see more of this content, just let us know. The easiest way is to go on YouTube, join the Discord, and we might have an opportunity for you to join the live chat very soon. Appreciate y'all. Have a wonderful night. Trust the Current. Anything to say for a farewell?
Have a great night.
Have a great night. Peace out, y'all.